I stared at my father across my desk, barely recognizing the man who had abandoned our family 15 years ago. His expensive suit couldn't hide the desperation in his eyes as he leaned forward, his voice a mixture of entitlement and charm that I remembered all too well. "Come on, Emily," he said, spreading his hands in what he probably thought was a disarming gesture. "I'm your father. Everything you have, all this success, you wouldn't be here without me. Don't I deserve to share in it?" My name is Emily Chen, and at 35, I'm the CEO of Chentech Innovations, a company I built from nothing into a $10 million enterprise. The irony of my father showing up now, after years of silence, wasn't lost on me. He had walked out when I was 20, leaving my mother and me with nothing but debt and broken promises. Share in it, I repeated, keeping my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Like you shared in our struggles after you left? Like you shared in Mom's medical bills when she got sick? He had the decency to look uncomfortable, but only for a moment. The past is the past, Emily. I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. And now, he gestured at my office, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline. Now look at you. You've done so well for yourself. Surely you can spare something for your old man? I studied him carefully, noting the designer watch that probably cost more than our old monthly rent, the manicured nails, the perfectly styled hair. He looked successful, but I knew better. My private investigator had been thorough. Dad's gambling habits hadn't changed, just the stakes. He'd burned through his third wife's inheritance, and rumor had it he owed money to some dangerous people. Why now? I asked, though I already knew the answer. 15 years, Dad. Not a single call, not even when Mom died. He flinched at that, but recovered quickly. I wasn't in a good place then, Emily. I couldn't face you both after everything. But I've been following your success in the news. Chentech's breakthrough in renewable energy storage, the government contracts, the Forbes feature. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. The words I'd once longed to hear now felt hollow, tainted by the desperation behind them. I thought about all the nights I'd spent working multiple jobs while putting myself through engineering school. About Mom working herself to exhaustion at the diner to help with my tuition until her health gave out. Those early days of Chentech, operating out of my tiny apartment, living on ramen and coffee while I refined my energy storage prototypes. Where was he then? When I nearly lost everything to a patent lawsuit from a bigger company, where was his pride and support? How much? I asked quietly. His eyes lit up. Well, considering everything, I think half would be fair. I cut him off with a laugh. Half? Of Chentech? You think you deserve half of what I built? I'm your father, he said, his tone hardening. Everything you are, you got from me. That brilliant mind of yours? Those are my genes. Your determination? I taught you that. I stood up, walking to the window. Seattle's autumn rain traced patterns on the glass, and I thought about another rainy day 15 years ago when he'd walked out our door for the last time. You know what I got from you, Dad? I turned back to face him. I learned how to spot manipulation. I learned that people will say anything when they want something from you, and I learned that blood doesn't mean loyalty. He stood up, his facade cracking. Now listen here. No, you listen, I said, my voice steel. You want money? Fine. Come back tomorrow at noon. I'll have something for you. His anger melted into a grin. I knew you'd understand, sweetheart. You always were my clever girl. As I watched him leave, I thought about the envelope I would prepare for him. He had no idea what was coming, but for the first time in 15 years, I was actually glad to see him. Because tomorrow, he would learn exactly what kind of clever girl he helped create. That evening, as I sat in my penthouse reviewing the documents my lawyer had prepared, my phone buzzed. It was Alice, my best friend since college and now Chentech's chief legal officer. Tell me you're not really giving him anything, she said without preamble. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Trust me, Alice. I know exactly what I'm doing. Emily, I've seen this before. He's just going to take whatever you give him and come back for more. Men like that, they're never satisfied. I know, I said, looking at the papers spread across my coffee table. That's counting on. After hanging up, I walked to my home office, unlocking the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a worn shoebox filled with newspaper clippings, old photos, and documents I collected over the years. Every article about my father's failed businesses, Every court record of his divorces, every piece of evidence of his schemes and betrayals, I had them all. Some might call it obsessive, keeping such detailed records. But I learned early on that information was power, and I never wanted to be powerless again. I pulled out a particular photo, my college graduation. Mom was there, thin and tired from her first round of chemo, but smiling so proudly. We'd sent Dad an invitation, more out of obligation than hope. He didn't come, of course, but he did send a text. "Sorry, kiddo, tight on cash right now. Maybe next time." 2 weeks later, I saw him in the society pages at a charity gala with his second wife. The memory still stung, but now it just strengthened my resolve. Tomorrow would change everything, but not in the way he expected. I stayed up late into the night, making sure every detail was perfect. The documents had to be ironclad, the timing precise. By the time I finally went to bed, the rain had stopped and a strange calm had settled over me. For 15 years, I carried the weight of his abandonment, the anger, the hurt, the questions of why I wasn't enough for him to stay. Tomorrow, I would finally set that burden down. But first, I had to spring the trap he'd walked right into. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. My assistant James was already there, organizing the day's schedule. "Your father's appointment is confirmed for noon," he said, his tone carefully neutral. James had been with me since the early days of Chentech. He knew enough about my past to understand the significance of this meeting. "Perfect," I said, heading into my office. "Make sure security is ready, but discreet, and have Alice come up as soon as she arrives." The morning passed in a blur of meetings and calls, but my mind kept drifting to the envelope sitting in my desk drawer. Inside was everything my father thought he wanted, and everything he didn't expect. At 11:55, my phone buzzed. "He's here," James texted. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and prepared myself for what would likely be the last conversation I'd ever have with my father. Right on cue, he strutted into my office, somehow looking even more confident than yesterday. The smile on his face reminded me of a shark that had spotted its prey. If only he knew who the real predator was. "Emily, sweetheart," he said, spreading his arms like he wanted a hug. I remained seated, and his arms dropped awkwardly to his sides. "I knew you'd do the right thing. Family has to stick together, right?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit down, Dad, we have a lot to discuss." He sat, practically vibrating with anticipation. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the envelope he'd been so eager to see. "Before I give you this," I said, holding it just out of his reach, "I want to tell you a story about what happened after you left." After you left, I began, still holding the envelope just beyond his grasp. "Mom and I had exactly $247 in our checking account. Do you remember how much you took when you cleaned it out? $42,000. Our entire savings." His face tightened, but he maintained his smile. "Emily, that's all in the past. We don't need to." "Oh, but we do." I cut him off, my voice steady. "Because what happened next is very relevant to what's in this envelope." I stood up, walking to the window. Seattle's skyline stretched before me, the Space Needle piercing through the clearing morning fog. Mom took a second job, night shifts at the diner. She was so tired she could barely stand, but she kept working because she believed in me, believed I could make something of myself. Turning back to face him, I continued. I worked too. 3 part-time jobs while studying engineering. Do you know what kept me going? Every time I wanted to quit, I'd remember how you said I'd never amount to anything without you. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I never said. September 15th, 2008, I interrupted. "The last thing you said before walking out our door. Good luck making it without me. You'll both come crawling back eventually." I smiled coldly. "I have an excellent memory for details, Dad. It's one of my best qualities." Moving back to my desk, I sat down and opened a laptop. "Would you like to know what else I remember? Every business you've run into the ground. Every woman you've married and left bankrupt. Every gambling debt you've accumulated." With each word, I pulled up documents on my screen, turning it to face him. His confident facade cracked slightly. "How did you?" "I've been watching you for 15 years, I said simply. "Every move, every scheme, every failure. I knew someday you'd show up here, thinking you could claim a piece of my success. So I made sure I was ready." His eyes darted to the envelope in my hand, then back to my face. Whatever you think you know. I know about the money you owe to Marcus Chen, I said, watching him pale at the name. No relation to me, unfortunately for you. I know he's given you until the end of the month to pay back the $2 million you borrowed. I know about the insider trading investigation that's about to break at your current company. I know everything, Dad. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. I came here to reconnect with my daughter, to make amends. No, I said quietly. You came here because you're desperate, because every bridge you've built on lies and charm is finally burning down around you. You came here thinking you could manipulate me one more time. I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is a contract. It offers you exactly what you want: financial security, a clean slate. All you have to do is sign. His eyes lit up, greed overtaking caution. He reached for the paper, but I held it back. But first, I continued, you should know what it really means. This contract doesn't just give you money, Dad. It gives you a choice. I pressed a button on my desk, and Alice entered the office, carrying another set of documents. My father's eyes darted between us, confusion replacing his confidence. Choice? He asked, his voice wavering slightly. Yes, I said, laying out both sets of papers. Behind door number 1, you sign this contract. You get $5 million, enough to pay off Marcus Chen and start fresh. But in exchange, you legally forfeit any claim to Chen Tech, any right to contact me or my employees, and you agree to a complete non-disclosure agreement about our family history. He licked his lips nervously. And door number 2. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You walk away with nothing, and tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Seattle receives a detailed dossier about your colorful business history, including some very interesting documents about your current company's financial practices. You wouldn't, he whispered, but we both knew he didn't believe that. Wouldn't I? I asked softly. You taught me well, Dad. Never leave anything to chance. Always have leverage. Those were your lessons, weren't they? He slumped back in his chair, the weight of realization finally hitting him. You planned this. All of it. The moment you walked into my office yesterday, everything was already in motion. I confirmed. The only question was whether you'd be smart enough to take the deal. Alice stepped forward, placing a pen on the desk between us. The choice is yours, Mr. Chen. But I should mention that the offer expires in exactly 10 minutes. My father stared at the pen, then at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Respect. Not the fake pride he'd shown yesterday, but genuine recognition of what I'd become. You really are my daughter, he said quietly. No, I replied, my voice firm. I'm my mother's daughter. She taught me perseverance, integrity, and love. You taught me what happens when you lack all three. He picked up the pen, his hand trembling slightly. $5 million to disappear forever? To never contact me again. I corrected. What you do with your life after this isn't my concern, as long as you stay away from mine. As he signed the contract, I thought about Mom. She hadn't lived to see Chen Tech's success, but she believed in it, in me, until the end. This moment, this victory, was as much hers as mine. Alice quickly notarized the documents and handed my father a sealed envelope containing the wire transfer information. The funds will be available within 24 hours, she explained clinically. After that, any attempt to contact Ms. Chen will result in immediate legal action and forfeiture of the entire amount. He nodded, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. As security arrived to escort him out, he turned back one last time. Emily, Goodbye, Dad, I said, already turning back to my computer. I trust you can find your way out. After he left, Alice stayed behind, watching me carefully. Are you okay? I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I'm better than okay. For the first time in 15 years, I feel free. $5 million is a lot of money, she observed, even for Chen Tech. I smiled, thinking about what she didn't know yet. It's worth every penny to ensure he never comes back. Besides, I turned my laptop to show her the screen. The money isn't coming from Chen Tech. Her eyes widened as she read the display. Is that the algorithm I developed last year? I nodded. While we were having our little family reunion, it was completing a series of perfectly timed trades. We just made $12 million, more than enough to cover Dad's payoff and then some. Alice laughed, shaking her head in amazement. You really did think of everything. I had 15 years to plan, I reminded her. But now it's time to focus on the future. We have that green energy contract presentation this afternoon. As Alice left my office, I took one last look at the Seattle skyline. The morning fog had completely lifted, leaving the city bright and clear. It felt like a sign, the shadows of my past finally clearing, making way for whatever came next. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the old shoebox of documents. All those years of tracking my father, collecting evidence, preparing for this moment, I didn't need any of it anymore. Picking up my phone, I called James. Could you have someone take this box to the shredder and then clear my afternoon schedule? I think it's time we had that staff appreciation lunch I've been promising. It was time to focus on the people who actually deserve my attention. My team, my friends, the family I'd chosen for myself. I'd spent enough energy on the past. The news of my father's sudden wealth and subsequent disappearance spread quickly through Seattle's business circles. Speculation ran wild. Some said I'd bought him off. Others claimed he blackmailed me. I let them talk. The truth was far more satisfying, but it was mine to keep. 3 months after our final meeting, I sat in my office reviewing Chentech's latest quarterly reports. Our renewable energy division had exceeded all projections, and the new government contracts were proceeding smoothly. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, free from the weight of waiting for my father to resurface. Ms. Chen. James appeared in my doorway. There's someone here to see you. She says she's your sister. I froze, my hand hovering over the keyboard. Sister? A young woman stepped into view behind James. She couldn't have been more than 20, with familiar dark eyes that made my heart skip a beat. Hi, she said nervously. I'm Grace. Grace Morgan. David Chen is my father. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Of course he had another family, another daughter. Why was I even surprised? Let her in, James, I said, keeping my voice steady. And hold my calls. Grace perched awkwardly on the edge of the chair my father had occupied 3 months ago. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. She had his chin, his way of fidgeting when nervous. I'm sorry to show up like this, she began. I found out about you recently. Dad, he came home 3 months ago with a lot of money and a lot of secrets. Then last week, he disappeared again. Mom finally told me everything. I studied her carefully. Everything. About his other family, about you and your mom, about Chentech. She twisted her hands in her lap. I always knew he wasn't a good person, but I never knew the extent of it until now. Why are you here, Grace? I asked gently. She lifted her chin, and in that moment, she looked less like our father and more like someone determined to break free of this shadow. Because I'm starting college next semester. Engineering, actually. And I don't want his money. I don't want anything from him. I thought maybe you'd understand that better than anyone. I felt something shift inside me, not quite sympathy, but recognition. Here was another young woman determined to build her own path, to be more than David Chen's daughter. Where are you planning to study? I asked. I got into MIT, she said, a hint of pride breaking through her nervousness. But I'm still figuring out the financial aid situation. Mom's a teacher, and now with Dad gone again. I opened my laptop, typing quickly. MIT's engineering program is excellent. I'd almost went there myself, but couldn't afford it at the time. I turned the screen toward her, showing her Chentech's internship program details. We offer full scholarships to promising engineering students. The application deadline isn't for another month. Her eyes widened. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you apply, Grace. Like any other candidate, no special treatment. You'll have to earn it on your own merits. But if you're half as determined to succeed as you seem, I have a feeling you'll do just fine. Tears welled in her eyes. Why would you help me, after everything he did? Because you're not him, I said simply. Neither of us is. And maybe it's time we showed the world what Chen women can do when we support each other instead of letting him tear us apart. She wiped her eyes, straightening in her chair. I won't let you down. Don't worry about letting me down, I told her. Focus on not letting yourself down. That's the only standard that matters. After Grace left, clutching the internship application information like a lifeline, I walked to the window. The Seattle skyline had changed since I first started Chentech. New buildings, new dreams reaching toward the sky. I thought about cycles breaking, about turning pain into purpose. My phone buzzed. A text from Alice. Who was that? You looked deep in thought. I smiled. Typing back, someone who reminded me that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping others rise above. That evening, I stayed late at the office, reviewing the latest prototype designs for our new energy storage system. The technology we were developing could revolutionize renewable energy accessibility in developing nations. It was exactly the kind of world-changing work I dreamed of doing back when I was working those 3 jobs to pay for engineering school. My desk phone lit up. James from the front desk. Ms. Chen, there's a package for you. Minutes later, I was staring at a small, worn envelope. The return address was from a law firm in Arizona, but I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. She must have arranged for it to be delivered years after her death. With trembling fingers, I opened it. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means you've achieved something remarkable enough to make the news, just like you always said you would. I asked my lawyer to hold this letter until then. I know your father's absence has been a wound that never fully healed. But remember what I always told you. Some people are meant to stay in our lives forever, and others are meant to teach us who we don't want to become. You were always stronger than him, smarter than him, better than him. Not because of his genes or his lessons, but because you chose to be. Every sacrifice, every late night, every obstacle you overcame, that was all you. I'm sorry I couldn't stay to see the woman you've become, but I know in my heart that you're magnificent. Remember that success isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. All my love, Mom. I pressed the letter to my chest, letting the tears fall freely. After a moment, I picked up my phone and dialed the number. Grace, it's Emily. Listen, instead of waiting for the internship applications, why don't you come by tomorrow? There's someone I'd like you to know about. Her name was Sarah Chin, and she taught me everything I know about real strength. The sun was setting over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. From my office window, I could see the Chen Tech logo glowing on the building across the street. Not my father's name anymore, but a symbol of everything my mother and I had built from nothing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone pay for their mistakes. Sometimes it's about building something so magnificent that their absence becomes irrelevant. Sometimes it's about taking their greatest failure, abandoning their family, and turning it into your greatest triumph. Creating a new kind of family, bound not by blood, but by choice and determination. I looked at the photograph on my desk, my mother at my college graduation, thin but smiling, her eyes full of pride and love. Next to it, I placed Grace's MIT acceptance letter. Different paths, same spirit. The future was bright, and it belonged to us. The daughters who refused to let one man's failures define our destiny. That night, as I finally headed home, I thought about cycles breaking and new beginnings, about a young woman who walked into my office carrying the weight of a name she didn't choose, and walked out with the promise of a future she could build for herself. And I thought about my mother's words, proving yourself right. That's what this had all been about. Not the money, not the success, not even the satisfaction of outmaneuvering my father. It was about proving that love, determination, and integrity could build something stronger than any fortune or legacy. Tomorrow, I would start teaching Grace everything my mother taught me, and together, we would write a new chapter in the Chen family story, one where the daughters rose from the ashes of their father's failures and built something beautiful.